Hello.
Good day.
Welcome.
Good afternoon.
Is it afternoon? Oh,
It is.
I guess it is afternoon.
Yeah, me and Travis usually only start in the evening, so this is a little strange for us to have daylight outside.
It is a bit.
We're running just a little bit behind, so I appreciate everyone kind of holding on and waiting for us to get here. We've got a hard exit in about 50 minutes, and so I'm going to get right into it here. Today we're honored to join with Dr. Chuck Johnson. He's the 22nd president of Vincennes University. Been that way since 2015. Dr. Johnson brings deep experience from Purdue's Krannert School of Management and other higher education roles. What makes Dr. Johnson, I'm sorry, I've got that wrong right now, especially relevant to our conversation today is he hands-on leadership in preparing students for a fast-changing, technology-driven world. Under his guidance, VU has built strong work-based learning partnerships with companies like Toyota, Cummins, Amazon, and Telemon Robotics, including advanced manufacturing apprenticeships, mechatronics programs, and new network of collaborative robot labs across Indiana. They make that hard to read. That's pretty good. I have to really think about what I'm saying. He's also driven student success initiatives like Student Success Center, co-requisite remediation, expanded tutoring, and massive growth in early college programs, reaching thousands of Hoosier high schoolers. As a member of Governor's Workforce Cabinet and a leader in Indiana's advanced manufacturing ecosystem, we believe Dr. Johnson is the right at the intersection of education, industry, and emerging tech. Exactly the place we need perspective on how colleges are adapting to AI acceleration and what that means for our kids' future. Dr. Johnson, welcome to Unite the Divided.
Great to be here. Thank you.
We appreciate it very much.
So my only question is, do you prefer Dr. Johnson, Chuck, or Mr. President?
Chuck is what most people call me, especially if they're my friends. So.
Okay. Well, you'll give us 40 minutes and then we'll know what we can call you after that, right? Depending on the questions. Well, again, welcome. I greatly appreciate you being here today. Because we are a little short on time, usually we would do some pleasantries and whatnot, but I think your resume and your position gives you enough authority that we can just kind of get right into it. And like you said, hopefully this conversation goes well. And if so, we can maybe do a little longer podcast next time. Maybe we can come visit you or you can come visit us.
We'd love to have you come up, do a site
awesome.
visit. Yeah.
It's been a long time since I've been on the campus. I'd really like to check it out again.
Good deal.
So just get right into it here. So how are colleges making themselves more relevant, affordable, and adaptable in 2026?
Well, I think you're seeing a real shift in the way colleges are positioning themselves. Obviously, all of us are concerned, particularly in the Midwest, with enrollment declines and the expected decline in the number of high school graduates who are coming out over the next 10 to 15 years. And so I think you're seeing colleges and universities look for their lanes or their niche that helps them to define themselves in a way that makes them attractive to the audiences they've gone after. I think the other thing you're seeing is increased focus on affordability, reducing student debt, maintaining the high ROI on the investment in college, whether that is speeding the time to degree, whether that's creating pathways that are stackable that allow people to start with a short credential and then stack onto that toward an associate degree or a bachelor's degree or beyond. But I think we're at an interesting time, a bit of a crossroads within higher education, where some of the forces that have been slowly creeping up on us over the last decade or 15 years are going to be accelerating. And it will be, I think, a especially stressful time for a lot of institutions, but a time of great opportunity for those that can distinguish themselves.
So, I mean, AI is moving so rapidly, and I guess a lot of the questions that we're getting, it seemed like for a good long while, most young people were kind of going towards college, and that's what we were told. Everyone needs to do it. And for a long time, I've got an education degree myself, and for the longest time, it just seemed like we have too big of a funnel, and it's squeezing out, kind of the same types of products over time. I mean, I know colleges do a really good job of getting kids ready, but it seems like things are really tightening up now. And is college still the smartest path for most kids, or as many kids have in the past, or do we need to do a little bit better job, figuring out what's best suited for each kid, or what, a 2-year degree or 4-year degree?
Well, I think you've hit on something, Chad, that is really critical. I don't know that we've I don't know we got the messaging right the last 40 or 50 years. I think we've sold colleges the pathway, the only pathway. And I think that has really never been the case, but probably oversold that. But I'm also concerned we might be overcorrecting on the other side and making sure, because I do believe this. I think we see the kinds of things that are happening with technology, AI, other changes in our workplace, and we know that skills are important. We also know that those skills are likely best acquired with some post-secondary education of some form, whether that's a degree or a certification or an associate degree or whatever it might be. I think some ongoing training and the ability to kind of refresh and renew and upgrade over time is going to be critical to the future. What I think we need to also peel back on is the idea that you have to be 18 years old and go to college and graduate at 22, or else you're not a success. We've always had, or historically, we've had the I think great understanding that for some folks, it made more sense for them to go to school part-time and to get a degree while they were working, or to take their time and get to different levels of degrees. I myself worked my way through undergraduate master's programs and PhD programs. Took me a long time to get through all those programs, but I was also able to pay for my way, able to find ways to earn while and support a family while I was doing that. And there's no harm, and certainly no shame should be placed on the idea that I'm 30 years old when I get my bachelor's degree versus 22. And so I think we've got to take a step back and say there's more than one pathway to get to an outcome that will benefit you, your family, and your career. We offer a lot of programs that start with maybe a short-term credential that will stack into the next level credential that can be paired with a bachelor's degree or beyond. And I think that we've got to get away from this notion that I'm a failure if I don't do it through the traditional route. The other thing I think, and I'm pretty passionate about this, is we've got to be really honest with students and families and parents. We've romanticized this idea of I've got to go to my dream school, and we've somehow given people the notion that if I don't go to this school, my life is not going to be complete, or I won't be able to achieve my dreams. And there's several things that are missing in that equation. First of all, college is, and always probably has been, but especially now, is an investment. And how many of us would buy a stock or invest in a piece of property just because we fell in love with it? No, if you're really making a wise decision, you're doing the nuts and bolts kind of analysis about whether I can afford it, how much it's going to cost to finance it, what kind of return can I expect from that investment, and we've got to do the same kind of analysis and sit down. And that might mean for some parents saying to a son or a daughter, we've got this much money saved up for college. If you go to this private school or if you go to this expensive program, we can get you so far, but you're going to have to borrow money and you're going to graduate with debt. Or you can take this route and you can graduate debt free, whether that's working in an apprenticeship while you're getting your degree, or having the ability to maybe go part time while you're working and things like that. So I feel like we've got to nuance the conversation a little bit more, and we've got to really hit hard with parents, with guidance counselors, and with prospective students and young people that you don't have to do it one way. And you need to look at this as I'm investing in myself and my future. And I think if we can strengthen those messages and really get that to the folks at the earliest possible moment, we'll have better outcomes. People will make better decisions for the long term. We all hear about college student debt being a major problem, and it is. It's a concern. College student debt's now about $1.8 trillion in total. But a lot of the horror stories we hear of the $150,000 person who graduates with a degree in French literature and is a barista at Starbucks, those are really a small percentage of the folks. What we really see are there are a lot of folks that are borrowing money. Only about 60 to 70% of students who graduate for the bachelor's degree actually have student debt. Which is a high percentage. I'm not trying to dismiss that, but it's not 100%. And the average student debt is probably the cost of an average new car. How many of them are going out and buying that new Tesla or whatever when they get their degree, spending $60, $70, $80,000 on that, and not thinking about that as a bad investment or a bad expense, but then they're concerned about having a $35,000 student debt. So we've got to also kind of put it in perspective. The other issue with student debt is we have a significant challenge for those folks that collect student debt, that have a significant debt, maybe $15,000, $20,000, but don't get the degree that will help them pay off that debt. And how do we figure out how to manage that off ramp for them, or give them a ability to kind of get back on the ramp, because it hinders them throughout the rest of their life, because that debt never goes away. So I think we've got to be real about the cost of college. We've got to be real about the opportunities from college, and we've got to stop romanticizing this idea that I've got to go to this really, really special school in order to have my life be fulfilled.
Well, it's like I put a ball on a tee for you, because you ran right into my next question. One of the main things we've got going on with parents, and I've got a 15-year-old, is rapid AI, debt risks versus return. And one of the fan weave questions that we've got here is, how are you all tracking which degrees are already becoming obsolete due to AI, and tracking the debt risk for vanishing jobs and warning students in real time. So me and Travis and our guests, we always talk about AI just because I feel it's so important. We need to talk about it every week. We need to be talking about it every day, because there's a lot of confusion, there's a lot of fear, there's a lot of concern. And, even with a 15-year-old, I have no idea what it's going to look like when he gets college level. So I feel like, for me, my own personal, being a little greedy here, I got to figure it out in the next few years.
Sure.
Got a little skin in the game, huh?
Yeah. I like the gap year. So you kind of touched on the gap year concept. Some people used to go to the military and get on some kind of a program. They'd have time to think about doing different things, some practical application, doing some internships or some apprenticeships, and then coming back and getting more technical.
Right. Well, actually, we have about 2,800 students throughout our system who are doing some form of apprenticeship or work-based learning as part of their academic program. So it doesn't have to be an either or. And these folks are largely graduating with little to no debt. They're jumping into career paths that are immediately available to them. And I think that's a great opportunity for a lot of folks who, again, are looking at this from a standpoint, I've got to do it this way. There are multiple pathways to do it. And the other thing, you mentioned AI. One of the challenges with AI is we just don't know yet. Mm-hmm. I mean, we're starting to see some aspects of it. I was listening to a podcast the other day, and one of the people on the podcast kind of put it to me this way. It helps sell it out for me a little bit more. If AI is replacing the easy part of your job, then your job is relatively secure, because it's just taking on things that perhaps were time wasting more of the work that you were doing. If AI is taking on the things that were hard about your job is in jeopardy.
Right.
And so I think we need to look at those career paths where there's still some strong need for folks to be able to do these core pieces of the role. And you think about all the hands-on programs that we have, machinists, diesel technicians, robotics technicians, nurses in healthcare and things. I'm not saying they're completely immune from the use of AI and automation, but I think they are more insulated from it than others. Areas of the trades, we have about 1,500 or so folks in apprenticeship trades programs across the state of Indiana. These folks' jobs can't yet be replicated and replaced by AI and by robotics and automation. They will probably be enhanced by that, and they may eventually, perhaps not yet in my lifetime, be replaced. But by then, other opportunities will hopefully have sprung forth, and we'll see new career paths in their wake. So I think that the main thing is you can't, in my opinion, you gotta shoot for having the ability not just to come out with a degree, but the ability to come out with the ability to learn, the ability to adapt, the ability to grow. Because the world has changed a lot in my time since graduating from college 40 some years ago to today. And I think the thing that has made, I'm not saying I'm relevant anymore, but the thing that I think has kept me at least employed is my ability to adapt and change and grow as the situations change, and as I've developed new skills and new experiences and built on the things that I've done in the past. If I was doing the same things I was doing in 1984 as I'm doing today, exactly the same way, I'd be unemployed. And so we've got to teach people how to grow on their own, how to learn on their own, how to keep their skills fresh and up to date.
Well, I have I'm sorry, Travis, I'll get right back to you. That I have a question that's directly related to that. Again, we talk about how kids are being prepped to learn going into college even. I guess, I kind of had this question queued up kind of for the last, but, what do you think parents, students, and even teachers K through 12 could be doing better to get them maybe ready to come to college and present themselves in front of you? And I mean, are there questions that they should be asking themselves? Take your hat as president of Vincennes University off and act like you have a 15-year-old or an 8-year-old, which, that's what we both have. So that's kind of
I have the 8, he has the 15. We don't both have 15 and
8. I'm a little older than he is, Doctor.
I didn't know if you were co-parenting. I wasn't sure. So
my two dads. It's not a my two dads situation.
That's not.
Well, I have an 8-year-old granddaughter, so
there you go. Okay.
So I can relate.
It's relevant.
So here's the challenge, and I want to be careful here because I have tremendous respect for the K-12 education system and the teachers that work there. I have many members of my family who have spent time, including my own wife, who've taught in K-12 systems over their careers.
Me and Travis can be critical for you. How about that?
Okay, but it's a tough job. It's a tough job.
I have an education degree. I get it.
and I think here's what I think, and it's probably not the popular opinion. We put too much emphasis and expectation on the schools and not enough responsibility and emphasis on the parents.
Oh, absolutely.
I think it's not a school's job to prepare a student for the world. It's a school's job to prepare them to be prepared for the world, to give them skills that they can use. But it's a parent's job. It's the family's job to raise them and to give them all the things that will help round out their knowledge and experience. And we push on education because we can. We don't push on the parents because we can't. But the parents is where the real problem is. Parents are the ones that make sure the student has, prepared to go to class, has done their homework, is up in time to go to school, is ready to do the things they need to do. A teacher can't educate a student who doesn't show up, who isn't prepared, who won't read the assignments. Parents have to be part of that. And I think that's the piece that we've really kind of ceded. We've said, well, we can't do anything about that, so we're going to let it go. And I say this as a parent, as a grandparent, as someone who deals with these situations even at the college level. We're held accountable for outcomes with graduation rates and things. And I've asked people, what am I supposed to do in terms of helping a student graduate who won't even go to class? How am I supposed to educate that student? Our teachers will help them. They'll spend time with them outside of class. They'll do all the things that will help maybe catch them up or give them the extra support that they need. But if the student themselves won't reach back and take the hand that's being held out to them, how are they going to be successful? And how are we going to hold schools accountable for that? I'm not saying there aren't improvements that could be made in school, aren't saying the things that we could do better. But we kind of box schools in with all the ways that we assess their work and their students' work. And we don't really spend enough time kind of really taking a step back and saying, are we teaching the things about knowledge? Are we teaching things about developing the way to think and the way to view the world? We've been involved with rolling out about 15 or so design and innovation studios around the southwest corner of the state. There's now about 45 of them in southwest Indiana, and we have our own training studio on the Vincennes campus. They're focused on K through 8 students. They're introducing robotics and electronics and 3D printing and different circuitry and things like that, programming. All these things that we know are kind of critical to the STEM foundation that's needed. But you know what the most important part of that is? Teaching students to work together, to solve problems on their own, to ask questions, to test and measure the results and go back and test again and find out. That's what we need. And we need the freedom to not measure that on a standardized test that gets held at the end of the year that frankly just doesn't measure the true things that we're trying to develop in these young people. I look at my granddaughter's curriculum and there's a lot of time spent on language arts, a lot of time spent on kind of rote things that we want students to master, but is it really moving us ahead, or is it just setting those students up for failure when they get to a place where the rules aren't written and AI is going to rewrite the rules for them? So how are we creating an environment and a population of students who are prepared to think for themselves, to creatively problem solve, and to look at the world perhaps without having a rule book to play by?
I think we're going to get along just fine.
There are a lot of coddled kids out there. Yeah. And I'm a helicopter parent. So, I'm going to say, I'll attest to the fact that I didn't have her till I was, I don't want to say how old I was, but I was older, we'll say.
You've got gray in your beard.
I think there might be a little dark every once in a while, but it's mostly white. And so I get that. But yeah, we definitely you got to take the time and the teachers. So his son goes to private school. My daughter, we tried the public school system. For 1 year, it wasn't for us. So we went to a private school, and they actually ask of us though. They say, they'll send us every week. We'll get kind of a summary. Hey, this is what we're going to do. We need you as parents to spend time on the iRead practice or on the spell or what, and she's only in second grade. So right now it's not near as in depth as it would be probably for Chad over there. But, they do at least ask us of that. So, but I agree with you wholeheartedly. There's way too much, not only coddling, but I think there's a lot of just giving into every child gets to have a say. I remember when as a child, I didn't have a say. I didn't,
Right.
Do this now.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't really I don't really feel like this is my safe space. I'm going to need to be right here, whatever it might be. No, like you do you get it done. And there may be a middle ground there that we should probably reach, not necessarily just always tell them what they're going to do, when they're going to do it, and how they're going to do it. Like you do need to let them kind of grow a little bit, but
Right.
but I think we've gone too far the opposite direction. But what I was going to say a little earlier was about AI. So I am in AI. I'm actually a software and AI developer for a company here in the Evansville area, and I really like how you put. I've actually never heard somebody say, if AI is going to replace the easy part of your job, you're okay. AI is going to replace the hard part of your job, there may be a problem. I actually really like that. I've never really heard that before. And it's somewhat true. The system we're creating can pretty much do anything that you could do on a computer. So if your job is computer-based and I don't want to say redundant, repetitive, then those systems are already pretty much available, and I'm developing one of them. So I mean, but I do like. So I did mostly what I wanted to chime in and say was I like that little blurb there. I think that's a very good way to put it.
Well, real quick, Dr. Johnson, I sit down with a gentleman named Dr. Roy Arnold a lot, and we talk about medical stuff. And he and some of his friends do believe that their fields are going to narrow pretty rapidly. Radiologists, when AIs can look at documents and overlap things and see trends and patterns that human eyes either can't see or don't see consistently. I mean, and I know that's probably, I don't know that you have any pre-med programs, so it's probably not up your alley, but I guess my point that I'm trying to get to, again, this is more relevant for Travis than it is for my son, who's 15. I don't think we have the time or the political wherewithal to force the system to adapt as quickly as it needs to get to the point where I've tried to talk to local K through 12 people, have them come to the forefront and talk about what is happening, because I feel like your position is what high schools should have right now. They should be thinking of things just like that, not we're prepping people to go to college, because right. I think that window is narrowing, and there's going to be more of a need for Vincennes University.
I think the trades.
Trades absolutely. Trades absolutely. I'm just saying for the general, I don't know what percentage of population that we've always pushed just to go to get the 4-year degree. It just seems like 4 years from now, that's forever. We need to be talking to these younger kids now.
Well, I agree, and I think what we've got to be careful is not to prescribe a pathway, but to describe an endpoint or a starting point, right? We've got to say, okay, you've got to be prepared to get here at some point in your career, or you're not going to be relevant, you're going to be obsolete. And that could be when you're 20, that could be when you're 30, that could be when you're 35, but understand what you're doing and how you're getting there. And that gets back to how I'm paying for college, how I'm pursuing it, the relevance of what I'm learning to what I'm doing now. There's great value in kind of that episodic learning. And we do a lot of programs, a great program with Cummins that the folks come to us from all over the United States. They're learning about power generations systems and how to support those. And they come to campus for 3 or 4 weeks at a time. Then they go out in the field for 2 months at a time, and they apply the things they just learned in that lab and in those classrooms. And they're staying connected through online learning and things in the process. But the idea is I learn, I apply. I learn, I apply. I test, I learn, I apply. And that to me is a great iterative model that you're not just focusing on 16 weeks of book work and lab work, and then you move on to the next semester. You're actually seeing, am I getting it? Am I using it in a practical way? Do I need to upskill in this part or that part? You get real-time assessments when you're doing it for work. And so I think we've got to figure out how to blend those worlds a little bit better. I feel like VU is doing a great job of that with our partnerships with industry. And I think more of that will happen. I'm concerned a little bit about how it happens at high school, because I don't know. I applaud and appreciate the goal that we're trying to accomplish. I just don't know if it fits in the high school model as well, partly because of maturity. I think there's a reason why you have to be 21 to be a police officer in Indiana, and I think that's a good reason. I think there's a reason why you probably might hire the 22-year-old over the 18-year-old for certain roles, even if their skills might be similar. Maturity plays a role. Emotional intelligence plays a role.
Can I push back on you just a little bit here?
Oh, sure.
Because I feel like this is what you're saying is all true with where we are today. And I think Travis hit the point, and he said he used the word coddled, and that's not what I'm getting at. But if you think about our founders, you look back over the history of our country, the age of people that came over here at a very young age and were the leaders of our country, I think we've kind of reverse engineered that now to where we're like, you can't do anything really intelligent until you're 22 or 25. And, the tech billionaires were rewriting a lot of the code that is pushing AI now. Like, those were very young people whenever they're doing that. So I guess I think, and I'm not saying all kids are created equal and whatever, but I just feel like we need to question our assumptions at all levels. And especially when we're talking about educating kids that are all different. We all have unique abilities, and they all have unique abilities. And I just want to be a little, cautious to say, our kids aren't able to do such and such until 22. And I'm not saying that's what you were saying. I'm just, I want to challenge the paradigm and challenge our own thinking whenever we're talking about stuff like this.
Well, I appreciate and understand what you're saying. I agree that we have folks that are at all different levels and capabilities and maturity levels. I think as a society, and whether this is because we've coddled them or because as a society we've matured in a way and we've maybe changed the maturity curve. And as an old guy, I think I can say this reasonably well. I think that when I was 18, I was at a different maturity level than most 18-year-olds are today.
Same.
I think that they may be smarter. They probably can do a lot of things that I could never have done.
He can fix my phone. He can fix my phone.
There,
And I can't.
there you go. There you go. But I think, and then what I'm not talking about is intellect. Although there's certainly some evidence to suggest that frontal cortex isn't fully formed at about 25. But I think if you look at the society we have today, and I think that we need to make sure that we're giving folks time to catch up in their maturity along with the intellect and the skills that we're developing. I think there's a reason why we want folks who have both a little bit of life experience and a little bit of knowledge. We can push it down further in terms of getting to the knowledge, but that doesn't replace what has to happen in some of that developmental experience that occurs with a little more life experience. And I hope I'm not offending anybody when I say this, but I feel like our approach is to now create a travel team approach to solving the lack of work experience and lack of life skills problem. Right? When I was a kid, I started, my first job, I was 13 years old. And I delivered newspapers, worked in a greenhouse, worked for a pharmacy, worked for a surveyor, did construction work, sold men's clothes, worked in a grocery store, worked on a construction crew, worked in the paint team. And then I worked my way through college in various roles. And I had a lot of experiences that taught me about dealing with people, working through problems, getting along with others, dealing with the public, dealing with stress in a situation that I didn't quite know what I was doing. All those were valuable skills, but I picked them up organically through a succession of different experiences. Now we kind of light on this idea that I've got to have an internship that's a structured program that is measuring learning outcomes, that is achieving some sort of outcome based on learning objectives. And I feel like it's the difference between when I was a kid and played Sandlot baseball, right? You might have 11 kids and try to figure out how to play two teams and 11 kids and one bat that was nailed together from the fact that someone broke it 6 times. And you had to figure out the rules and how many bases you were going to have and where home run was and where the foul lines were. And you argued, and sometimes a fist or two was thrown, but you solved the problems together and you figured it out. And that was valuable because we were developing our own problem solving skills. The travel team is great experience for those in terms of developing athletic skills, but is it developing those other skills that are so critical?
This is going to sound really blunt, but I feel you hit on a lot of really good things there. Our kids, coddled may not be the right word. They're isolated and insulated, and they're not getting that real world punch in the face, as it were. You said punch in the face, and sometimes I think me and Travis talked about this yesterday. Sometimes you do need a punch in the face, like either figuratively or literally. and that gives you that life experience that says, well, shouldn't do that anymore. And I feel
Absolutely.
I feel
I
that
was say I don't beat my kids, so I don't know what you're talking
well,
about.
I mean, I feel like, and this is not a nasty thing to say to schools, but again, our teachers aren't really able to punish in any real world capacity.
It's true. I had capital punishment whenever
the parents are able to dictate what they can and can't be chastised for. And I feel, it's the weak men make weak society, and that whole cycle is happening to us. And again, we can either address it and have some radical ideas and question things like that's what we're trying to do on this podcast. We can't be status quo. We can't just say, well, I hope the school system gets this one a little bit better. I mean, that's why people are homeschooling. That's why the attendances are down, I think, is what you're saying. So maybe play more into that. I think this is a really good
Well, I'll give you an example. This is 30 years ago. My wife taught in a suburban school in Northwest Ohio, and it was a mixture of affluent and working class kids. And she had a young man who was in and out of some rehabilitation programs, who had trouble staying awake in class, wouldn't show up to school with his books or a pencil or anything prepared to do work. And he had a counselor and very wealthy parents, and they came into a meeting, and my wife, with the principal there, who eventually stood up for her, but my wife was said, why can't you have a book there for him? Why can't you give him a pencil? Why do you care if he falls asleep in class? So it was all put on her as if she was the one that was up, not doing the part of the job. No pressure, no expectation on the kid. The parents certainly were not doing their part to try to toughen up the kid. And that was 30 years ago.
Yeah.
So think of how much more has continued to occur today. And I think that we've a punch in. I mean, I've got two cat teeth to talk about a punch in the face.
But that's a different podcast, I think. Maybe a bit.
But I think we've got to be careful. And I have this conversation with my daughter and son-in-law and their kids. It's okay for kids to not like something, or to be unhappy with something, or to be disappointed. It's okay if they cry if you say no. It's okay if they want to do something different, because you're teaching them that life isn't always going to go their way, and they're not always going to get everything they want. And you've got to teach that lesson early, because it really comes back to play later on when they are faced with that first big disappointment or that first big challenge at 24. It's going to be a lot harder for them to face it if they've never had to bounce back from any sort of disappointment or setback. So setbacks are an important part of life, an important part of learning. I'm not trying to say you set people up for failure, but you challenge them in a way that forces them to try harder, that doesn't coddle them, doesn't give them an easy out, and let them learn from the fact that maybe they need to work harder next time, or they need to learn from this experience so they can get better the next time they face adversity. And I feel like we have lost that.
Can you go back about 2 years ago and tell me that? So that I can do that for my daughter? No, I'm kidding.
It's never too late.
Okay.
I think where we are, frankly, Dr. Johnson, is the school has overreacted to parents expecting teachers to do too much, to the point where they hold back basically the entire class to bring this other kid up to speed, or make them feel included, or whatever the acronyms are that we're using today for what that means. At the end of the day, our kids should be struggling, and I don't think they should be sitting down for 50-minute classes. I think they should be out moving around. They should be in the sunshine. I don't know how much time you spent in a ditch, or playing it, rolling in the dirt, or whatever. I mean, I was outside most of my childhood, and I think Travis was too. And we've gone the polar opposite of that. And I'm not saying the ratchet effect coming all the way back to that is the right answer. However, we are way off base. We knew something was happening right back then because people were struggling.
Right. No, I agree. I had some education. I was educated in Catholic schools through 12th grade, and I can tell you I had some old school nuns and some old school priests. And
you still have some bruised knuckles.
I have yes. Well, I have some, if not scars, some deep bruises still to show for some
PTSD
of that.
when you see a ruler.
Exactly. I was telling somebody a story today. I went to St. Joe's in Princeton for part of my upbringing, and we had some pretty tough Franciscan nuns there. And I think. I think we maybe were too harsh during that period of time, but I think that we've overcorrected. One of the things I'm concerned about is the fact that young people either expect the system to adapt to them or they expect to be given a pass. And neither one of those is the way life has traditionally worked, at least in my experience. And so we are setting them up to have an unrealistic expectation. I think it's part of the reason why we have so much discord in our society with people who are living in some of the best best circumstances we've ever been able to provide mankind, feeling like the world is going to hell in a handbasket. And when you take a step back, you talk about hard times and soft times. This is a pretty soft time in the world. And so the things we're complaining about are pretty minor. My grandparents, got married in the middle of the Depression and then went through a world war. That's a lot harder than the world I've had to live with. And
Absolutely.
my family has benefited from having people who learned those hard lessons and taught them and passed them down, even if I didn't have to experience it directly the same way they did. And we've lost that because we want to make it easy for our kids. We want to make them feel good about things. And life isn't always about feeling good.
Well, I think I want to circle back around and basically ask you the same question again, because I feel like we just now have built enough context to make it make sense. If you had your kids right now in this day and age, knowing what you know, being in the positions that you are in, what radical ideas should parents adopt to, aside from taking kids out of K through 12 and homeschooling them, what experiences should our kids be forced into in some way? I mean, so one of two things is going to happen. Either people are going to pull themselves out of a bubble, or the bubble's going to burst. And so, when's the best time to make it uncomfortable? I think it starts now. And how do we do that? What's the real world practice look like? And I'm sorry, this is one of those probably difficult questions to ask.
This is a hard question, but here's a simple thing to start with. And again, maybe I'm putting too much value on what I grew up with, but my mom wouldn't let us back in the house in the summertime, right? We had to go outside and stay outside until we had to come in to use the bathroom or eat lunch or something.
But
Right,
Dr.
exactly.
Johnson, it's drizzling outside.
Exactly.
And that's
Get
the hose.
we
Get the
take off in the morning, and that's before cell phones and Apple Watches, and no one knew where we were.
Yep.
But we had to show up at the right time. We had to make sure we get back in home for dinner or whatever.
Streetlights. When the streetlights come on.
Exactly.
Yep.
And I don't know if you've read or followed Jonathan Haidt's work on the anxious generation and things, but this is kind of his ideas. We overstated the risk to the stranger danger thing, and that created this notion: I've got to keep them close. I can't let them outside. I can't let them play in the front yard. And then we've had society reinforce it, even for parents who are trying to give those experiences. They get the police called on them if their 8-year-old is walking a half block down the street. Right. And we've got to get back to some middle ground, as you're suggesting, where we trust our kids. We take a little risk. Life has a little risk. We take a little risk. We maybe say, go play outside, and I'm not going to be there monitoring what you're doing 99% of the time. We're going to let you get into a little bit of stuff and maybe a little dirt, and you might cut a finger or break an arm or something. Don't want any broken arms, but I've had my share. I've had my share. And I always said that my parents, in today's environment, my parents would not be able to have raised us to all my siblings and myself to the age of 18. Child Family Services would have taken them away. We were in the emergency room once a month at least, and sometimes there's 3 of us in the same day in the emergency room for different things. So it's. And I laugh about it and look at it now. I know it was probably traumatic for my mom to experience that at the time, but it also created that sense of adventure, and I survived it. I'm not gonna do that again. My brother dropped a lit match into a vat of chemicals and blew off half his hair. He didn't do it again.
Not those type of lessons. That's a little harsh. That's a harsh lesson.
He didn't do it again. But there are some things that you have to learn, and you learn well because you've experienced it. And we don't allow our kids to have their own experiences. So I would say try to find ways to let them have some independence earlier, and let them have some confidence that mom doesn't need to be there looking over their shoulder, dad doesn't need to be there doing everything with them. They can play themselves. My mom always said, if you're bored, it's because you've not got enough imagination to figure out what you need to do. And so that was an important lesson. I heard it a lot. But kids today, we don't let them get bored. They have to have a device in front of them, stimulation all the time. Let them get bored. Challenge them to build friends themselves and figure out games themselves. And so, it's easy for me to talk about it. I've been a parent. I'm not saying I was good at all this myself, but I think that things continue to shift further down the wrong end of the continuum, and we've got to bring it back to the center.
Yeah, I mean, I think we need kids to be more generalist and have a wide range of experiences. And I'm not talking about just travel or privileged things, but being in those situations that are uncomfortable and having failed enough times that you don't break down in the middle of an actual crisis.
Right.
I think that's kind of the world that we're building. We've put safe spaces around everything. And I know Travis teeters on this himself, and I know he talks about it a lot because she is a daddy's girl, and what she wants to some extent she gets. But as a father, and as even now with a 15-year-old, I have to make him struggle. I mean, right. And I just think that we're way underselling that, and I don't know. I think conversations like this are needed in mass, like people with your experience, seeing kids that are right out of high school, trying to be the bridge to get them onto a successful path. I think waiting until they're almost in college is a terrible thing. I mean, we should be regularly talking about this. Right. Our public school systems, they've had access to the internet since the beginning of the internet, and yet they don't have any type of programs that they're communicating with parents about what's going on and how we can make a stronger group of kids. I just feel like we're way underutilizing the technology that we have. And I just want to thank you first and foremost. I mean, we're kind of running short on time already, but for bridging the gap here, and I hope that we're able to do it more. And the goal for me is getting parents in all communities to hearing the messages that you're bringing, because you're bringing an old school perspective to some new world problems that we have going on. And I think without the old world experience, it's going to be really difficult for some of these kids.
I think so. And it means for parents, they have to kind of suffer through some of the anxiety they feel.
Yeah.
I mean, that's part of it right now is I feel anxious when I see my child unhappy or crying or hurt. I don't mean physically hurt, but that anxiety is ours. That's what we're doing to ourselves. And so we've got to figure out how do we manage that so that we don't immediately jump in and rescue. And I think that is a tough thing. It's not easy. And, maybe because my mom and dad cared about us, they loved us, but sometimes it's like figure it out yourself, buddy. This is your problem, not mine. And I think that was an important lesson. And the world somehow didn't end because I didn't get what I wanted, or I was hurt by the guy next door who picked on me and said things I didn't like. I somehow figured out how to get beyond that, and I learned that I can survive. And if I learn I can survive, then I learn I can survive other things that set me back.
Yeah, I mean, so before we wrap up here, I don't know if anyone has chimed in with any questions.
No, not live. No.
Okay, we had a bunch of them that we addressed prior to. I guess
we're normally an evening show.
I haven't paid too much attention to Vincennes of late. I did some research leading up to this. For anyone in Indiana, I think it's a very wise decision to look into this for kids that maybe aren't ready for a four-year full degree, or if they're unknown about what they want to do. I think going to a smaller college closer to home might be a better fit for some of these kids. And it sounds to me like you're doing a great job of bridging the gap for people. So I greatly appreciate that. We've got about 5 minutes left. So is there any kind of overarching thing that you want to leave with people, not only just people that are potentially going to think about going to Vincennes University, sure, which is the oldest university in the state of Indiana, by the way, 1801. Absolutely. Is that right?
1801.
Yeah. So that's just really impressive.
In Michigan, Wisconsin, or Minnesota. So, because when Indiana was a territory is when we were founded, and included all those states. So, so we can claim to be pretty old.
But being old doesn't
get you very far. Pardon me?
Yes, it was the original capital. Yeah.
It's the original territorial capital. Yeah. So, but being old isn't what we take the greatest pride in. It's being innovative and keep staying relevant for 225 years. But I would say this. I mean, we are a great place place for those who aren't sure. We're a great place for those who aren't probably looking for a bachelor's degree. We can offer a wonderful full college experience with intercollegiate athletics and clubs and all the amenities, residential campus, things like that. And that's unique among higher education. But we're also a great place for those who are just frankly, they're going to Purdue, but they can come to VU and be guaranteed admission as an engineering student, as a junior in West Lafayette, and not skip a beat. And they can save $10,000 off that same Purdue diploma hanging on the wall in 4 years. We're a great place for those who are just below the notch, ready to take on a 40,000 student campus in Bloomington, who just need a little more time and attention in a classroom where our average class size is 15 to 20 students. Our average lab sizes are 20 to 25 students versus the ones that you need to have a binocular to see the front of the room. And so I think that we are a great option for those reasons. Financially, we talk about the cost of higher education. Who among us would pay $20,000 for the same product, more for the same product, if I could get it for $20,000 less? And that's what you can do with a lot of the transfer pathways that we have. And so we're a great value. We're a part of the solution to the question about the ROI, particularly the I part of higher education. We have pathways that will lead you right into a career, whether it's in many of the technical areas or the healthcare areas that allow you to jump right in and make $60,000, $70,000 with an associate degree. So I think that if we take the pull back the lens and you look at higher education, VU can be a great entry point. We can be a great exit point for a lot of folks. And I just feel I've been at VU now, 13 plus years, and I can tell you that I've never been more excited to be associated with this institution because I see all the potential that we provide, all the things that we do that are unique, that can address many of the questions, the issues that are facing higher education and our society overall.
Well, I appreciate again you coming and sitting down, and I would love to do it again. I think you sound like a really fascinating person. We could probably sit down and have
I want to hear about the busted teeth. No,
yeah, I've got a lot of we can share a lot of stories. That's for sure.
Absolutely.
So I guess kind of to wrap it up, what is VU doing regularly to communicate the changes that are occurring? I think we hit on it a little bit on an earlier question, like certain degrees are kind of the need for them is going away. Like how do you handle the rapid change? What's your process, and what is there a faculty group that is isolated and focused on that all the time? And can people interested in Vincennes University or just people interested in learning about how colleges are adapting? Are they able to see that through you? And if not, I'd like to bridge a gap and say, if you have anyone on your faculty that would be interested in having a regular conversation, and I know you're probably super busy, I would love to open up myself to be a resource to that, and at least to get some voice. But anyone can do a podcast, so you guys can do that on campus. You don't necessarily need me to do it.
Well, you need to come up and do a remote, and we can take you into some of the work we're doing in some of our facilities and labs. We just opened a brand new $35 million health sciences facility, state of the art. If you've not been on campus in a long time, I don't know how long it's been, but if you've not been on campus in the last 10 years, you'll see a changed landscape. And I think some of the best infrastructure, and frankly, now one of the most beautiful campuses in Indiana. And I'd welcome you to come up. We've got a production studio, or we've got a TV radio station. We can set you up in one of those spots and let you use the green screen and everything.
Wow. And I'm going to have to learn something, Travis.
No, you won't. You'll just make me learn it all. That's what you do now.
Well, we can be the production team for you at that time, Travis. You can kind of relax a little bit. But I think you'd be amazed at the totality of the experience that we offer. We do pay close attention to the curriculum and the catalog that we have. We have processes where we're constantly, we're taking programs offline. We're reinventing programs. We just we take programs offline and bring them back as needs come back. We just relaunched a paramedic program in Du Bois County with our partners there that had been offline for about 10 years because we met the demand at the time. But we know that some programs are going to you're going to reach a period of cyclicality where there's now a need for it. And we brought it back up quickly and did things like that. And I think that's where VU is perhaps a little better than some other institutions, is that I think we're more nimble. We're a little quicker to act. We're a little closer to the ground of what's happening in industry, a little closer to the ground of what's happening with students. And I think that positions us well to transition for the future. We're in the middle of preparing for a major AI grant that we hope will be successful in receiving, that will help us accelerate the work we're doing to adapt the programs and adapt our approaches, incorporating AI, but perhaps more importantly, figuring out how we maintain the humanity that separates us from AI. What are the things we need to focus on to develop skills that AI isn't there or may not get there for a long time?
Well, that's perfect. I think you just summarized where we are today. And I again, just want to thank you so much for taking time out of what I know is a busy day. I believe, based on my experience with what I've read about you and now speaking with you, Vincennes University is lucky to have you.
Absolutely.
And I appreciate the fact that you're passionate about this conversation. Even you agreed to it and you came in ready to talk about it. And I feel like our next conversation, we might be able to talk, have some slightly more difficult conversation. But I mean, again, I think that tests the resolve of a university, of a company, of a family, to if you can take the and address the serious problems and the serious questions. You're being honest with people that are around you, and I think you're the type of person that would do that.
I appreciate it. Well, I probably not as politically correct as I need to be, and I'm certainly not as smart as I should be.
You would not have been on this program, probably.
Yeah, if you were politically correct, we wouldn't have reached out.
But I agree with you. We've got to make some hard choices now. We're a spot of our own making in some ways, but some of the stuff that we're facing, we've got to adapt and be prepared to move quickly, or else we are going to become less and less relevant. So, and I'm not talking about education. I'm talking about us. So I appreciate it.
Dr. Johnson, I appreciate your time, sir. Thank you to everyone that tuned in on a special broadcast today in the middle of the day. If you didn't get to watch live, obviously this will be on Spotify, Rumble, Twitter, Facebook. What did I leave out? YouTube. Yeah, so it's on all the major platforms.
The magic platform. Take a ride on the magic school bus.
Yeah, and again, if you're tuning in, I think giving Vincennes University a second look or a first look would be in your best interest. I just think I'm very appreciative for what you guys are doing up there.
Thank you, guys, and you're welcome anytime up in Vincennes.
Be careful because when we come up there, we're going to be up there.
I don't make hollow invitations. So.
Fantastic. I appreciate you, sir.
Thank you, guys.
See you
Appreciate
soon.
it.
Take care, everyone. Love you guys. I didn't know if you want me to leave.